Hey everybody, welcome to Economics in Miss Sullivan's house. This is the book we're going to be reading out of today. We're going to talk about a couple of quotes and read a section from the book to talk about why economics is relevant right now. So I'm going to start off with something that's specific to the assignment that I gave last week about supply and demand. So this is a quote by John Locke, L-O-C-K-E, John Locke. And it says, "The price of any commodity rises or falls by the proportion of the number of buyers and sellers." The price of any commodity rises or falls by the proportion of the number of buyers and sellers. And what that means is that it's supply and demand. If they have a small amount of something but a lot of people who want it, then they're going to start to make more of that thing, but it's also going to make the price go up in the short term. So the biggest thing that we've seen that with recently is going to be hand sanitizer. There was a story you may have seen in the news about a kid that bought 18,000 bottles of hand sanitizer and then wanted to resell them at enormously inflated prices. And some people were paying for it because the law of supply and demand says that when you have a small supply and a large demand, then prices go up and then eventually supply will go up as well to meet the demand. So I'm going to read to you what this says about this. And what do you need? No, go. And I'm going to read what it says about this, and then we'll go on to a different quote. So this says, "John Locke was one of the Enlightenment's greatest thinkers and is widely considered the father of modern liberalism. He also held several prominent official positions, including Secretary of the Board of Trade, which molded much of his thought on the question of economics. His investigations into the theory of supply and demand, that is to say, the factors affecting the supply and demand of goods and services in the market and the relationship between them, were especially notable. Though he was not the coiner of the phrase supply and demand, James Denham Stewart used it in his 1767 work, Locke's framing of the concept in some considerations was remarkable for its clarity and precision. In the quotation cited opposite, that's the one I read a few minutes ago, he identifies that market price is determined by the level of demand for a product in relation to the volume that is available. In simple terms, if two people want something and there's only one of the item available, the price will go up. But where two suppliers are competing for a single buyer, the price will go down. As Locke put it, that which regulates the price of goods is nothing else but their quantity in proportion to their rent, i.e. the level of demand." In the early years of the 19th century, Antoine Augustin Cournot would notably build upon Locke's work as he constructed a mathematical model of the phenomenon. So there are a lot of people who have done significant work discussing supply and demand and the needs that people have versus the wants versus what they're willing to pay. So economics has a lot to do with perceived value as much as anything else. Now, I'm going to read a second quote. This one is by Paul Samuelson and comes from a much more recent time. He said this in 1999, whereas the Locke quote was from several hundred years ago. So Paul Samuelson, says, "Economics is a choice between alternatives all the time. Those are the trade-offs." And trade-offs are a big thing right now. If you look in any of the news and see what's going on with all of the shutdowns and the stay-home orders and the quarantines, we have an issue of figuring out what our trade-off is. What's more important? In Chicago, the mayor actually came right out and said, we're trading livelihoods for lives. But you can't have a livelihood if you don't have a life. So they're concerned about keeping the death rates low enough that people are still alive to come back to their jobs when all of this is over. Other places are having very low mortality rates, and they're trying to say, look, if we don't open back up some of the stores, if we don't send kids back to school, if we don't do all of these things, then the economy is going to crash, and that's going to be worse than the mortality rates to begin with. People are going to start dying of things other than the virus. And so it's a trade-off. Are we willing to let the economy crash on the backs of keeping everybody safe? Or are we going to try to keep the economy afloat at the risk of possibly making more people sick than may have gotten sick otherwise? And the trade-off comes down to more than just money versus life. It comes down to how much life is going to be maintained if we continue to keep the economy shut down. At some point, people are not going to be able to pay their bills. There's going to be more homeless people. There's going to be sicker people because they can't go to the hospitals if they're not sick with the particular severe illnesses that the hospitals are treating. And so supply and demand is a big thing for not only the hand sanitizers and the toilet papers and the things that are making for all the jokes, but also for the way that we approach our economy to begin with at all. If we don't have enough hospital beds, that's the reason that we don't have everything open. The reason that we're under quarantines is we don't have the hospital facilities to care for everyone getting sick at the same time. Now, there are different interpretations of what that looks like and how many people would get sick and what the fatality rates are going to be in a place like the United States that has such advanced healthcare. But in general, what we're talking about with the economic side of this is the economics is all about choice, and it's all about supply and demand. Are you willing to pay what's being demanded for the supply that you want? Are you going to choose to give up one thing of value, money or something, for something else that's valuable to you? Whether that's hand sanitizer or toilet paper, because apparently that's what everybody needs right now, or whether that's paying your utility bills or your rent or getting ready for college and paying for your college applications. There's a lot of things that you choose between when you are setting up your economy. So that's all I have for today. I want you guys to keep working on your budgeting projects. Those are still going to be your main project for the whole semester. They're going to be very detailed. Tomorrow I'll probably come back and go over some of the particulars that I want you to be working on right now. But everyone, at least in my class, should have chosen a house, or I guess first a job with a salary, found a house and a place to live, and started working on types of insurance. So if you haven't done that and you're in my class, please go back and make sure that's done so that you can move on with the rest of us as we continue with the budgeting project in the future. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.